I had been reading creepypastas well into the night. I saw the ritual posted there. It gave clear instructions on how to switch places with your reflection. I chuckled at the absurdity of the post. I had seen other rituals before and sometimes was curious about trying one or another. Since this one was already on my screen, I decided to try it. Being ever the skeptic, I thought I would take minutes to freak myself out a little. I walked into the bathroom and closed the door behind me. I followed all its rules. 1. I turned off the light. I was left in complete darkness except for the faint glow of my phone screen. 2. I turned on the hot water in the shower and waited 3 minutes. 3. I turned on the flashlight on my phone, stood in front of the mirror staring at my own eyes, and shone the light directly into the eyes of my reflection, blinding myself as well. My reflection just stared back at me. 4. I lay my left hand flat against the mirror. My reflection did as well. After a few minutes, the mirror began to fog up. I was no longer allowed to blink until the mirror was completely opaque, and I couldn't see my reflection and it couldn't see me. 5. I began the chant. Reflectio, reflectio, veni ad me, per speculum, transgredi, et mutare animam. Over and over again. Reflectio, reflectio, veni ad me, per speculum, transgredi, et mutare animam. I stared into the mirror as I said these words. My eyes burned and watered, but I didn't blink. I stared directly into my own eyes in the mirror. Reflectio, reflectio, veni ad me, per speculum, transgredi, et mutare animam. The steam made it hard to see, but my reflection's eyes seemed darker. Almost too dark. My eyes were hurting, and I wondered how much longer I would continue with this childish experiment. But I couldn't stop now. I wanted to see what happened next. I needed to know what happened next. My head began to hurt and my chest began to feel tight. But I would not stop chanting, Reflectio, reflectio, veni ad me, per speculum, transgredi, et mutare animam. Reflectio, reflectio, veni ad me, per speculum, transgredi, et mutare animam. After what felt like forever, I couldn't take it anymore. I stopped chanting and turned on the light. I shut the hot water off. I opened the door to let the steam out and rubbed my eyes. The bathroom was quiet except for the occasional drip from the shower head. I picked up my phone. It was 12:05. I got back into Reddit to check if I had skipped any steps. I laughed a little at how silly I had been. Smiling, I looked back at the mirror and just for fun, I said the phrase one more time. Reflectio, reflectio, veni ad me, per speculum, transgredi, et mutare animam. I turned off the light and went to bed. Except, I didn't actually move. My reflection did. I saw it in the mirror. Turning around and walking away from the mirror, it moved slowly. It reached for the light switch and turned off the light. The bathroom was pitch black, but I could still see it. It turned back to face me over its shoulder. It smiled. The grin was too wide, too strange. His eyes stared into mine and I couldn't look away. I did it. I was on the other side of the mirror, and it was in my place. I am trapped. At first, I thought it was just a nightmare, a cruel hallucination. But no matter how many times I pinch myself or scream, I don't wake up. I am here, in this void. When the light breaks through the darkness, I see them, the reflections. But there is only light when a reflection is being used. They stand frozen, lifeless, like puppets waiting for strings to pull them. Their eyes are empty, their faces blank, as though they're nothing but shells. I tried speaking to them. "Can you hear me?" I shouted. "Please say something." But they didn't move. Not a twitch, not even a flicker of recognition. But nothing is worse than the utter silence. My voice echoes into nothing, swallowed by the mirror's void. I screamed until my throat was raw, until I literally couldn't scream anymore. They didn't even blink. When the light fades, I'm left in darkness again. It's so absolute that I can't tell if my eyes are open or closed. My own breathing is the only sound, shallow and ragged, breaking the oppressive silence. But then the light returned, spilling through cracks in the mirror like molten gold. One of the reflections came to life, animated by the movements of someone on the other side. A young girl brushing her hair. I could feel the energy as her reflection moved, but the girl didn't know I was here, watching her hollow twin. The reflections are empty vessels, slaves to the real world's commands. And I am now one of them. When my reflection stands in front of the mirror, everything changes. That smile, it doesn't belong to me. It stretches too far, twisting my face into something grotesque. Its eyes never blink, never waver, as though mocking me. And then it begins. I feel my body move without my control, following its lead. Every motion is an agony I can't describe. My joints creak and snap, twisting into unnatural positions. I smile through the pain, the corners of my mouth splitting, but I can't stop. I'm its puppet now, and it knows it. It enjoys this. I know it's not me out there. It's not human. That thing, whatever it is, doesn't belong in the world of the living. But it wears my face. It looks like me, and everyone is fooled. It never blinks. When it's not in front of the mirror, I can move freely here. The other reflections remain lifeless, but I feel them around me, waiting to be used. I stumble through the darkness, running my hands over smooth, cold surfaces, searching for something, anything, that could be a way out. But the void seems endless. I have to find a way back. I can't stay here. I can't endure this torture, watching that thing live my life while I rot in this hollow prison. But every time I move closer to the mirror, every time I think I found an escape, it appears, and it smiles. It knows. The darkness was a prison, stretching endlessly in every direction. It swallowed all light and sound except for the faint, dreadful echoes of my own breathing. Time didn't pass here. It was a liminal, unrelenting void, and I was its unwilling guest. It was relentless. I was nothing but its plaything. It toyed with me, bending and twisting my limbs when it pleased, forcing me to mimic its grotesque contortions. Every movement was torture. My bones strained, my muscles tore, and yet I could do nothing but grin and bear it, grinning against my will. When it smiled, I felt my lips split from the force of mimicking its unnatural grin. But worse than the physical pain was the despair. It whispered to me through the glass, its voice soft and mocking, promising that I would never escape, that I would become just another lifeless puppet, waiting to be animated by someone else's glance. I screamed at the silence, at the oppressive weight of the mirror realm. My voice only echoed back, hollow and meaningless. Sleep was foreign to me now. When I closed my eyes, I would hear it, dragging me back into the void. My dreams became its stage. Its voice thundered through my mind, filling every corner with its laughter. I began to wonder if I was even alive anymore. My sense of self, my sanity, felt like threads unraveling in a hurricane. But then, I noticed something. It was subtle at first, a flicker of awareness amidst the despair. I began to study the lifeless reflections around me, rows upon rows of them, frozen in horrifying stillness. Their eyes were fixed and empty, unblinking. They never blinked. And it didn't either. The realization hit me like a lightning bolt. Every time I blinked, even in this void, the reflection couldn't follow. It didn't know how. If it couldn't control this one simple act, this most human of gestures, then perhaps it didn't truly control me at all. It was a shred of hope, a flicker of resistance. But hope was dangerous in this place. I began to test it. When I heard it coming near, I closed my eyes, and it couldn't control me. It hated the fact. Each time it came back, the reflection grew angrier. Its voice thundered through the void, shaking the mirror realm. I could feel it clawing at the edges of my mind, desperate to reassert its dominance. But it couldn't make me open my eyes. How could it? It couldn't understand how to open something it never closed. It began to pound on the glass, the sound echoing like the toll of a death bell. I knew it was furious, but it was also careful. It couldn't break the mirror. If it did, the fragments would multiply me, scatter me into countless versions. And even in its rage, it feared what that might unleash. Still, it wasn't defenseless. I felt the void shift, the air turning electric. And then it spoke. Not in its mocking tone, but in a voice like 1,000 storms. Oculis meis, non tuis, non tuis. Its words roared through the void, and I instinctively flinched. My eyes flew open, but I didn't look at it. Instead, I saw another reflection. It wasn't lifeless anymore. The reflection it had commanded was moving, coming for me. It was inside of here now, fighting me from within. I ran. My footsteps echoed in the void as I fled, the controlled reflection chasing me. Around me, slivers of light spilled through the cracks, casting fleeting glimpses of the other reflections. Shadows stretched toward me, their puppet-like movements grotesque and inhuman. And then, the sound I dreaded most. The mirror cracked. The shattering wasn't a simple break. It was a fracture of existence itself. I felt my body multiply, splintering into as many pieces as there were shards of glass. I was everywhere, and I was nowhere. Every fragment of me saw a different piece of the void, a different angle of the lifeless reflections. But then I remembered. Through the chaos, through the agony of being scattered across the mirror realm, I forced myself to focus. Defiantly, I looked my reflection in the eye. My voice, multiplied by every fragment of me, began to chant. Reflectio, reflectio, veni ad me, per speculum, transgredi, et mutare animam. The words echoed and overlapped, growing louder with each iteration. The reflections' screams of fury filled the void, but they were drowned out by the power of the chant. The fragments of the mirror began to glow, their edges shimmering with a blinding light. Reflectio, reflectio, veni ad me, per speculum, transgredi, et mutare animam. The light consumed the void, pulling my scattered self back together. Piece by piece, I felt whole again. The reflection shrieked one final time before being dragged into the void, its twisted grin vanishing into the darkness. And then, silence. I opened my eyes. I was back in my bathroom, trembling and gasping for air. The mirror was whole again, and my reflection stared back at me. But it wasn't smiling. I turned away, stumbling out of the bathroom. Relief washed over me, but only for a moment. As I passed a small mirror on the wall, I froze. It was there. It stared back at me. I could feel its hate radiating into the bathroom. Beside it stood another figure, its new companion, the reflection he'd commanded in his attempt to kill me. The void had not yet claimed defeat, and now it waits.